Hey guys, so we have the most exciting guest on today. I was just explaining to her that my mum got very excited when I told her who was coming on today. So we have Ella Mills, founder of the huge empire that is Today Deliciously Ella. I'm so excited. I have so many things to go through, but hopefully we're going to cover a bit of everything. But welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I've followed you online for ages. Love everything you do. So it's really
Oh,
nice to meet you.
thank you so much. I really feel like very calm in your presence. So this is going to be a really nice chat. So can we start? I feel like you had a very personal journey into this world, which is always what people connect to the most. You can always tell when someone really has it in them to make a difference. So can you kind of explain why you entered this world that you're in today?
Absolutely. And I also just want to pick up on one thing really quickly, because what you said there with you can so often tell if someone has it in them to make a difference. You could not tell with me. I did not have that in me
Oh,
as a
really?
child. Yeah. And anyway, always think that's interesting because so many
Yes.
entrepreneurs and people with maybe interesting careers are exactly that. And I was not that. So I always feel like it's good to hear that from
Caveat that,
people.
yeah, it is good. But then you, as we'll kind of go into it, it was your own health issues, which then made it was this huge empire has been a byproduct of that, right?
100% in a way, complete accident.
Yeah.
And it all started, it's very interesting. I had no interest in healthy eating, didn't like vegetables, was deeply unambitious, didn't know what I was going to do with my life. So everything that I have today and have done up until this point is so different than anything I would have ever imagined for my life. But that's exactly right. It was back in 2011, really completely out of nowhere. I got very, very unwell. And I was a university student, was really enjoying my life at uni, hadn't really loved school, hadn't been that happy. And suddenly I was like, this is what life's all about. Certainly living my best life. And really out of nowhere, I got very, very unwell. And I spent most of the rest of 2011 in that hospital, seeing all sorts of different specialists, neurologists, endocrinologists, gastroenterologists. I had MRIs, colonoscopies, endoscopies, cystoscopies. I swallowed cameras. I think the longest I spent in hospital was about 10 days in any one go. Wow. And basically I was just seeing kind of specialist after specialist, going through what started as kind of more common illnesses and medical challenges up until like the most niche of syndromes, while people tried to get to the bottom of what it was. And it took months and months and months. And eventually I was diagnosed with a condition called postural tachycardia syndrome that, very colloquially speaking, looks a lot like long COVID in the sense of nothing's really working. No one's sure exactly why or what caused it, right, and what exactly to do about it. But I couldn't regulate my autonomic nervous system properly. So I couldn't regulate my heart rate properly. I had lots of challenges with my blood pressure, circulation, digestion, my immune system. I had really bad chronic fatigue. I was sleeping kind of 16, 18 hours a day.
Wow.
And it's the kind of tiredness where you feel like the idea of moving is so cripplingly exactly beyond. As opposed to I need a nap, although I would sleep like 3 or 4 hours at a time during the day. Anyway, and I was prescribed all these repurposed medications by the doctor. There was nothing that had been specifically designed for this condition, but they'd had various successes using some repurposed medication with some patients, not everyone. So it was I would say the doctor made it very, very clear to me that there was no guarantees that this was going to step change my health and kind of put me back on a trajectory to a quote unquote normal life in the semblance of being able to kind of do day-to-day activities and tasks.
That must have been so stressful because you go to a doctor kind of wanting that and expecting that reassurance and that kind of hand holding, like, nope, we know exactly what it is. And they didn't really. So that must have played a huge part on your stress as well.
That was exactly it. It's really funny because when I look back on it, I wasn't stressed at that point. And I think it was a twofold. I think, I was so crippled by the illness, by the chronic fatigue, the just complete full body exhaustion and pain that I almost didn't have the energy to be anxious or worried. Right. On one hand. And then on the other hand, exactly that. I just assumed at some point someone would say, I know what it is. Yeah. I know what to do about it. I'm going to fix it for you. And, a few months later, I'd be back to normal. I just thought that it could all be outsourced.
Yeah.
And it was really about 6 months or so into trialing this multitude of different medications. At its peak, I was on about 25 different medications a day, and I was 21 at this point, so I was really young.
And you'd just come from living your best life at uni to this whole new world.
Yeah, and it's an interesting time because I think it's a time in your life where the world is full of possibility because you haven't yet realized kind of maybe how challenging working life can be and all the rest of it. And you feel like I can be anything, I can do anything.
Yeah.
I could live anywhere. You know, there's this just...
Limitless.
It's a limitlessness. It's such a amazing feeling when you're, I think, in your really early 20s and when you're at university and you're just discovering the world to some extent. And obviously what I had was the polar opposite. I was essentially confined to being at home 24 hours a day with my mum. And that was really difficult. But it was about 6 months into the medication that it really dawned on me that it wasn't working and that if it wasn't working, I would be confined in that way and wouldn't be able to. As I said a moment ago, it wasn't that I was a deeply ambitious person. I didn't have these big life plans. I didn't have big goals. I didn't know who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. I hadn't dreamed of getting married and having children. I hadn't dreamed of a big career, but I had totally taken for granted, I think as most of us probably do as teenagers, that all of these options would be possible for me.
Yeah.
And I could obviously live independently and have a job and all the rest of it. And I couldn't. And that became really clear to me. And having been so extraordinarily apathetic for essentially the year before that point, kind of just waiting for someone else to solve the problem for me, it suddenly really dawned on me that they weren't going to do that. And that was the moment that really feels like the kind of bottom fell out of my world, because no one was going to solve the problem.
And did you at that moment feel really defeated, or was it like, okay, I have to take matters into my own hands here?
Completely defeated. Having been, as I said, very, very apathetic up until that point. And as you said, like lots of people now looking at me like that must have been really difficult. And I was so apathetic, I just didn't care about anything. There was almost no emotion left in me. There was nothing. I hadn't cried. I hadn't kind of broken down.
Just weak and nothing to give, kind of.
Exactly that. Just entirely checked out. And that was the first time. I kind of think that maybe it did wake me up in the sense of I suddenly had this outpouring of emotion. And I just remember being completely hysterical, having got off the phone to the doctor and he was like, I don't have anything else left for you to try. That's it. And I was just absolutely hysterical. And I think it was when I realised that, no one was going to solve this for me. There wasn't anything left. And what did that mean? And I sat with that feeling very, very sorry for myself for quite a long time. But a few months later, I think that level of emotion and the wake-up call that had given me, that was the moment where I thought, well, there must be something else.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think, I was very clear at this point that there wasn't going to be a quick fix or some kind of magic fairy one that was going to solve everything. But the more I started to wake up, the more I kind of could look myself in the mirror and say, you're not doing anything to help yourself. Nothing. You are literally, you are sitting there and the hours that you're awake, you're refreshing Facebook, looking at the world that other people are living and making yourself feel worse about your situation. Or you're watching terrible reality TV or Grey's Anatomy, just eating pick a mix, which is making your heart palpitations so much worse. Like there is nothing that you are doing that's helping yourself or productive. And yes, there are so many limits on what could be productive in my life at that point. But equally, if I was honest with myself, I wasn't doing anything to help.
But that's amazing that you were able to, whilst feeling so weak and defeated, also kind of take a bit of an honest look at yourself and think, well, no, I'm not helping the situation here. And then I guess that led you to the medicinal powers of plants.
That was exactly it. It took me a year to get to that point. Yeah. So it was a long time of complete resignation. But then that was when I thought, well, other people must have had similar experience. I'm not the only person in the world sitting here with this. There must be other people who've had similar experiences and there must have been things that helped them. So I went to Google.
Yeah.
Not recommending necessarily to solve all your life's questions and answers, but
Now it's ChatGPT.
I was going to say now AI will come and do it for
Yeah.
us. But I started looking up natural healing, people who've healed from health conditions, etc. And I just started reading stories of people all over the world, all different sexes, ages, conditions, but they had this common thread, which was that they were using lifestyle and diet and nutrition to change their health and change their well-being. And I just felt, look, if it worked for them, it might work for me, and it's completely worth trying.
Yeah. And then, so because what I find really interesting about your kind of timeline is back then that no one was really talking about the power of plant medicine and nutrition with healing your body. And I guess your doctors didn't either.
No one was talking about it. And I'm really conscious we sit here today, 2025, we're all talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, not
Which
enough.
is amazing.
Exactly.
But I feel like you were the person that really made everyone look differently at food. You were the kind of first person, especially on social media.
No, it's really kind of you. No, it did feel very left field. I mean, and I definitely had a lot of raised eyebrows, which would probably be a really nice way of putting some levels of the criticism. But it did. It's really interesting because it's not very long ago, all things considered, and yet the landscape was so different. And like I said at the beginning, I was not one of those people you would have bet on having a successful career or starting a company. And it was only because I couldn't find any of the resources. I found people's stories, and then I found a lot of data about nutrition and how important it is for your health, which, as we were saying, really wasn't part of a kind of mainstream narrative in the way that it is today. But I couldn't actually find the tools to implement it in my life. Like, how do I actually...
Now what?
Yeah, now what? Exactly. What do I actually do? Like, it's Monday. What am I eating? What am I doing with my life? And so that's why Delicious Yellow came about. And I am so all or nothing. Like, it's 100% or zero with me, to my detriment, definitely at points, although I think it served me well to some extent building the business. But I knew I had to hold myself accountable. And that's why I did it online. A girlfriend said, oh, have you seen, like, people have started doing recipe blogs, putting their recipes on the internet. You can do that. So I thought, okay, good idea.
Oh my gosh.
And then again, the same girlfriend said, and have you heard about this thing called Instagram?
No way.
It also just shows kind of how quickly cultures moved on.
Pushing you.
I know. She helped me so much. She really pushed me. She was a real support. And so Delicious Yellow was born, and it was called Delicious Yellow because my maiden name... From day one. My maiden name was Woodward, which doesn't have a great ring to it. EllaWoodward.com. It's not very catchy. And the aim was to make it delicious. As I said, I didn't like vegetables. I wasn't excited to eat broccoli. Had never cooked a lentil. Like, chickpea felt kind of a sad health food store ingredient. And I thought, how am I going to make this something that I'm excited about and want to do day in, day out? I know it's obviously very, very similar to your attitude, which is that looking after your body isn't a 7-day plan. It's not a 24-hour thing. This is a lifestyle change. And that's what I wanted it to be. And we obviously had lots of diets in the world at that point. Diet culture was kind of at its peak. But what you didn't have was, how do I take this long-term, very holistic, sustainable approach to my health? And that's what I wanted to do.
I don't think anyone back then spoke about sustainable health and well-being. It was always crash diets and what was that, lettuce soup, cabbage soup?
Yeah, Special K diets.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy to think when you think about it. As you just said, it's not that long ago.
It's really not that long ago, and it's the environment that we all grew up in. And so I think there's so many of us in our 30s, our 40s now, like, even if it was subconscious, that kind of Heat magazine, you know, ring of shame around celebrities, you know, lose a stone in 2 days.
Best abs. Do you remember where it was like photo in that magazine, best abs of the week and things like that? It's
exactly.
Like,
and then the circling of cellulite. I mean, it was a really strange environment. It was all very focused on weight. Exactly. It was not about health. It was not about well-being. It's not about kind of how you feel in your body. Do you feel empowered, strong, etc. It was all exactly like, how do you look like the Special K lady in a red swimsuit?
How do you get your jeans on?
Exactly. So it was a really different approach.
Yeah.
And it definitely confused people.
And you were a real voice in your blog. And as you say, I love the fact that you were on your own health journey and really were not that way inclined to be eating, you know, you said you were in bed eating pick and mix, and now you're suddenly experimenting with recipes and sharing that. So how did you then take what was then, which was your food blog of your own recipes that you were just sharing whenever you kind of felt like it, to the empire it is today? What was the, in a nutshell, journey? Because it's just unbelievable. Like, what you've created is just incredible. And I really think you're such a good role model for so many people, especially women, to look at what you've done. And it's amazing. So I want to hear about the journey.
Oh, thank you. No, honestly, the first part was really accidental. It was, you know, I really, really believe in success. A huge component is being in the right time at the right place. It absolutely is. And Delicious Yellow was definitely one of those things. You know, I think we all get opportunities like this so rarely. And when it comes, you've got to run at it with everything that you've got. I believe that very, very strongly. But it was one of those moments, as we said, where blogs, where Instagram, where home cooking was starting to resonate with people.
Yeah.
And although it hadn't reached a mainstream narrative, I think that people were starting to look at this rise in lifestyle-related diseases and slightly question, although we weren't calling it ultra-processed food, and again, in the mainstream at this point, what is the link between our diets today, what had become the standard Western diet, which is ultimately quite unhealthy, this rise in lifestyle-related diseases, and I can suddenly get all these resources about home cooking. And so it was just, as I said, being in the right time in the right place. And the site it was around 120 to 150 million hits in the first 2 years. And there was no marketing, there was no publicity. It was 100% organic word of mouth growth.
Wow.
In this community, which now, obviously, I was a complete baby at this point. I was in my very early 20s. I knew nothing. Now, you know, a long time into my career, I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, people would pay a lot of money for those stats. Like, and getting that organically is not something that happens very often. And so this community had formed, and the community asked for things. And initially it was things like cooking classes, supper clubs, workshops. Then it was an app to have all of the recipes in one simple place. Then it was a cookbook. And so my health was getting better and better. I was becoming so passionate about sharing the simplicity of how to cook at home, how to cook more natural food, get more plants in your diet. I wanted to reach as many people as possible. And so we just started responding to people. So I thought, okay, I can do cooking classes. I went and found a kitchen in Old Street. I started doing that. We found all sorts of venues around London to do supper clubs. And then I found a developer, this great freelancer in Chiswick, who developed an app for me. And that was one of the kind of very strange moments where I, again, knew nothing.
But it probably felt like a real business then. It was like, oh my gosh, where is this? I
do remember saying to my mum, like, I think this can be my job, you know, I think there's something in this. And I put out the app and I put it up on the blog and the Instagram page at this point. And again, this is really early on in terms of us understanding whether there's any commercial value in social media.
Yeah.
You know, people were starting to build community, exactly. But such a different landscape than today, where obviously it's of such extraordinary value and such huge importance to kind of any business at this point. But I put it up and the app went to number 1 on the App Store, on Apple. And I was like, again, didn't appreciate it to the extent I would now. But again, I remember just thinking, right, well, that's unexpected. That's something good. In this. And the similar thing happened with the book. It became the best-selling cookbook in the whole of the UK, but the number 1 book on Amazon across any category, like fiction, non-fiction, any best-selling author. Like, it was the number 1 book. I think it was like 7 consecutive weeks.
Wow.
It stayed at number 1 on Amazon. And it did. It kind of launched this conversation in the UK. And suddenly, I think I was 23 at this point, and I was on any kind of broadcast media, newspaper, talking about my journey from sickness to health, talking about getting people eating more plants, etc. And it just exploded.
Wow. Did you at that point have a team?
I had someone who was a friend of a friend who was interested in this space, which, as we were saying, is quite a niche space at this point. It's the first person I found. And she had also just graduated from university. And I was like, I just need help. Will you come and help me? You are hired. Are you nice? And she's now godmother to my second daughter, one of my closest friends. So she was helping me, which was great. But then a few weeks after my first cookbook came out, I met my now husband and business partner, and he is someone who's like a serial entrepreneur. He can see a glass of water or, you know, a bookshelf and just have 8 ideas about how to make a business from it.
That's amazing.
And which is not me. I've always been, as I said, a kind of accidental entrepreneur, which is that I had a problem, and in solving it for myself, I became really passionate about solving it for other people. And that was the drive, whereas he just has that business mindset.
But that's probably the perfect combination coming together, because your community were really feeling that organic, genuine connection to you wanting to help people, but then you had the support of your husband that had that strategic mind.
100%. And he was stuck in a job that he hated. And so a week after our first date, we moved in together.
Oh my God.
Yeah, as all sensible people do.
I love this.
And about 2 months
paid off.
later, 10 years later now, we're all good. And then about 2 months later, he quit his job because it's, as you said, it was so clear that together we would enable each other to do so much more.
2 months after you met, he quit his job
Yeah.
and came into your business.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And then like a month
Best
later, we were
decision ever.
engaged, had a dog.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not been a slow moving decade or so together.
He thought, I need to lock this down. She's onto something here. No, I'm just joking. That's amazing.
It's that all or nothing mindset again. But exactly that. And I knew, for me, I was obsessive about the brand, about the community, about the mission, and how do we change the food landscape? How do we drive that forward? And he loves the business side of it.
Yeah.
And so together we were able to grow so much faster, do so much more. And it's funny, people often say like, I think as a kind of, not as a criticism, but I wouldn't say as a compliment. Like, I don't understand, like, you started it, you're the founder, it's your business to that extent. Like, why would you make a man the CEO of the company? Which I always think is a really interesting question, because actually I believe so strongly, like, you've got to know your strengths and weaknesses.
I
And
couldn't agree more.
we all have them. And like, I am not a spreadsheet person.
Yeah.
But I knew how to build a community, and I knew how to build a mission that was fundamentally different to everything else that existed in the food landscape.
Yeah.
I knew when we started talking to manufacturers and they said, we'll just add this flavoring, we'll just add this emulsifier, don't worry, we don't even have to declare that one on pack. And I was like, no, we're doing it differently.
Yeah.
And I knew how to spearhead that. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I knew I didn't want to be kind of deeply operational in our supply chain and all the rest of it. And he is so brilliant. He's so level-headed. He's brilliant at building the team, at all of those functional bits that make a good business.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy to look at something and think, oh, you've kind of given it away, etc. But actually together we've done so much more successfully than we ever would have done apart.
Yeah, I think that that's a really odd way for someone to kind of look at it and think, why would you give that away? It's actually just adding to the business. And I think also I can, in some small way, understand the fact that with my business, I don't want to be just about the numbers and things like that. I want it to be about helping people and having an impact. And if I was to really get in on the number side of things and the business side of things, I would lose sight of what actually matters, which is why I started things, which is exactly the same as you. So I really believe in the power of your team and really bringing on experts and realizing what you're not good at.
And it's not easy to stick your hand up and say, you know what, that's a real blind spot for me, or actually I'm really, really weak in that area. And I think especially starting the business so young, I definitely felt that really deep sense of imposter syndrome, because we were then hiring people into the business who maybe had a decade's experience, and I had 1 minute's experience.
Yeah.
And so I remember kind of, having a lot of self-doubt in that. But actually, as I said, it's always been about trying to come back to like, where do you add value?
Yeah.
And tripling down on that and appreciating, as I said, together you're so much stronger.
Yeah, and it sounded like you always had that clarity from day one, knowing what you wanted to bring and what you couldn't bring. So that's great. And how did you two then expand and grow your team? What was your kind of format or pathway with building the team?
It was exactly this that we were just saying, which was really trying to lean into like where our strengths and weaknesses were.
Yeah.
And I wanted to lead the brand side of things. Matt was really really focused on the finances, the team, the kind of absolute bones of the business. But neither of us had ever worked in food before. We're completely new to this. I mean, I was going around supermarkets, turning around back of packets, saying, like, I don't understand, why are these emulsifiers in there? Why are those flavorings in there? Why are those preservatives in there? I want to do this without. But we didn't have any context in the manufacturing industry. We didn't know what the margin structure should be, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, well, we've got to hire the best person in terms of their knowledge of this industry and pitching to retailers and things. So we contacted the head of innovation from Innocent Drinks, and we were like, you know, come be our first hire.
Because I guess actually now, as you mention it, they were probably one of the first brands that were doing kind of clean ingredients on the go food, right?
Exactly.
And that's what you
100%. And that head of innovation role had kind of insight into so many different areas. And obviously you're such a small team. When you start, you've got to have lots of generalists really to some extent. And I have no idea why he took the job, honestly.
Believed in you.
And I'm always like, I am so surprised. But I think he's still a good friend. And I think he was ready for essentially his segue into how to, you know, becoming MD or leading businesses. And so this was an exciting step for him. So he came and he worked with us I think he worked in the business for 3 or 4 years. Yeah. Was phenomenal. Really was great at helping us set up, helped us find our first manufacturers, and was absolutely great. And he's gone on to lead some really cool businesses, and I said, so it's still a really good friend. But it was, as I said, it was like, it's okay to be the dumbest person in the room to some extent, you know, really, really lean into what do you not know.
Aware of what you don't know.
Exactly. Know what you don't know. I think it's one of the best things.
Yeah, definitely. And then you went into creating product. And that, I guess, was another response into what your community was asking for.
It was. But it also, that was, I think, when we started to be a lot more strategic. And that's obviously when we hired him was that, as I said, I was going around supermarkets and the way that I ate before, I did love pick and mix, but it wasn't what I would classify, or I think probably most people on the street would classify as an unhealthy diet. Okay. But it was very much that standard Western diet that's taken over now, where actually when you start to look at it, what you're doing is like grabbing a sandwich on the go, you're eating some cereal, etc. And when you start actually looking at the ingredients, which I had never done before, because why would you? I just looked at what the flavors were. Yeah. Actually, as I said, the sandwich had, say, 30 ingredients in it, and there were 4 different E numbers in the bread. And that is so common. That's what, if you grab a sandwich on the go, it looks like much more than it doesn't. Yeah. And as I said, I was looking at it, and our most popular recipe at this point had been an energy ball. And there were 5 ingredients in it. It was almonds, almond butter, dates, cacao powder, and salt. And that's it. And then the leader in the market at this point had 20 to 25 ingredients in it, so many flavorings, emulsifiers, etc. And I was looking at it and thinking, I don't understand, like, why does this have so many ingredients? I make these at home every day, but obviously it takes time to make these things at home. People's lives are busy. Like, surely we could put something better on shelf. Yeah. It doesn't need these ingredients. I just fundamentally don't believe that it needs it. And so we went about saying, okay, well, can we challenge the food industry? Can we do this? What we saw as a kind of giant science experiment of scaling a brand in different categories and different products, but retaining that 100% natural credibility. And early on, it was so difficult to find a manufacturing partner because they all said, no, it's not possible, you know, or it's too expensive. Like, we've just got to add a little bit of this or a little bit of that. And I was so resolute, like, we're not going to bend for anything. No. It's this or it's nothing. And eventually we found this really great little manufacturer, and they took us on and was so kind of open-minded and everything. And we bought it. We bought the same factory 18 months ago, so it's now part of Delicious Yellow, and we're still making that same product there. That's amazing. Yeah, almost 9 years later, which is so great. But that's really what kicked it off. Is the book had just come out. Exactly. There was this whole conversation around changing our diets and the power of our diets, but what was on shelf in supermarkets just didn't meet any of those needs. And it still doesn't. Like, what's on shelf is still, it's kind of increasingly ultra processed and so difficult for people to navigate. But our aim was to show that it is possible to scale while staying 100% natural.
And now you have so many different products. I mean, I am obsessed with the hazelnut spread. It is so good. And the peanut butter. I love all of your products. I think they're amazing. What other ones do I use? The pesto is incredible. The protein pasta.
Yes, that one is my favorite at the moment.
I think I like the rigatoni one,
Yeah.
the green one. So good. So tell me about kind of the evolution of the product. Why did you choose what you chose? Was it kind of you were just listening to your customers and creating that easy kind of staples to have at home, or how did it?
It was a combination really of a few different things. To start with, it was how do we transition Delicious Yellow from being a food blog and an online community into a business?
Yeah.
And that was really where actually snacking came in. And we had published so many recipes and our cookbooks of like, what do you do to cook at home when you're busy after work, etc. But it feels like people's time and energy is very limited. So time to make snacks is for most people a bit pressed. And as I said, then I was looking at things that I was making at home with 4 or 5 ingredients that had 25 on shelf and thinking, okay, let's do it differently. But also that allows us to be really front of store or till point, etc., and really try and transition the brand into the business that it is today, where people are seeing it front and center. And so we went after Starbucks as our first customer, which somehow we got, which felt like some kind of miracle. But it was,
That's amazing.
I know.
Incredible.
How do we be, very easy to consume, front and center in this mission to kind of change the food landscape? And so we started doing kind of more and more in that area. And then about 2 years ago, we started talking to Waitrose about their plant-based offering. And actually, the plant-based category is really interesting because in supermarkets, should be synonymous with health. And obviously, it should be kind of your carrots and lentils and chickpea type category. But actually, especially the chill part of store, it's all meat mimics, and it's up to kind of 75% of the area exactly is ultra processed food. And so we were looking at this when we were talking to Waitrose and saying, like, I think we could reinvent this together. And so we launched a new brand, Plants, which is where those pestos sit and those protein pastas. Initially, it was just for Waitrose, and now we're kind of scaling it beyond that. And when we sold Delicious Yellow last September, went into partnership with a really great group called Hero. But Matt and I kept Plants, and that the focus of that is now in the same way with Delicious Yellow. And the products have been so much about snacking and showing that those can be 100% natural. What we want to do is now do that in the plant-based category with Plants.
Oh, that's amazing. So congratulations on selling. That must have felt such a moment to you.
It was such a moment. I mean, it feels in a way no different. Like we both still have the same jobs that we've had for however long in the business. Matt's still CEO. I'm still there every day and kind of really scaling up that mission. But we reached a moment where we'd really established that it was absolutely possible to scale with 100% natural ingredients. We were doing so well. The product's selling incredibly well. But ultimately, you're a all things considered, small independent brand, and all the brands you're sitting next to. And in most part, selling better than, which I'm so proud of and could have only dreamed of that when we started, are owned by the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah.
And there's a certain point that ultimately, like, we don't want this to be small. We want this to be massive because we want to show everyone that it's possible to do it without natural ingredients. Like those big companies taking their lead from what we're doing, that would be success.
Yeah.
To us, that's not copying or that's success. That's showing that we can change this industry. And ultimately, we want to reach more people. We had so many opportunities internationally, but like we just don't have the resources, the people, the team to really take advantage of those opportunities. So it was the right moment to have a partner to kind of take it to the next level. So that feels really exciting. But it's a nice, actually, I'm really enjoying it because I feel like I split my time between Delicious Yellow, which is now at this kind of quite grown up moment. And a lot of it is about this scale and international expansion and how do we really, really compete at that level with these big brands, which is such an amazing opportunity. And as you said, something I could have only dreamed of.
Yeah.
But then we've got Plants, which is like our baby.
Yeah.
And it's 18 months old and it's a startup and it's like changing by the moment. And it's really, really kind of, dynamic and ever evolving. And then I spend time exactly on my podcasts and cookbooks, which feels so creative. So I feel really lucky actually at the moment. I feel like I've got a really nice spread of work where I feel like I'm tapping into all the different parts of my brain.
That's incredible. And how in all of this do you take care of your own kind of 360 approach to health and wellness? I love your whole ethos of sustainable well-being and creating a lifestyle that really works for you. So what are the other things outside of nutrition that you do to just feel your best and also to show up as, you know, not the CEO, but the founder
Yeah.
Of two businesses now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think definitely for a long time I neglected my health in all of this. Life was just so busy. I'm still making an effort, but to some extent I would often say like, I don't have time to do it. And I would say I've generally flipped it around. I'd say I don't have time not to do it, because exactly to your point, like when you're just so strung out and burnt out and exhausted, like you're not bringing brilliant creativity and energy and drive and momentum and confidence to everything that you do. And so I definitely feel like I'm much better at my job when I take time. And when I say time, it might be something that takes 10 minutes to look after myself. And I think it is really changing that mindset as well to that sustainable approach. Like I love the idea of daily-ish, you know, the habits that you do most days, but you don't need to be tough with yourself. No one is consistent enough to follow through 365 days a year on the things that help them. I think for me, the biggest things is I have a really racing mind, very busy head, chronic overthinker. And I find just might be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if I'm lucky, 15 minutes of meditation or breath work when I wake up. Yeah. And my husband and I do it together, which again really helps. It just makes it easier.
Accountability partners.
Full accountability partners. And I think it makes it easier to follow through when someone else is keen and on it as well. And so doing that first thing before the kids wake up, that helps so much. I feel like it just completely reframes my thinking. And again, I think it's really easy in the world of wellness, which is so saturated and often quite saturated with very big things that people must do to some extent for their health and wellness, to think 5 minutes of breathing won't make any difference or 10 minutes of exercise won't make any difference, but it really, really will.
It does.
Exactly.
And it has such a knock-on effect to everything else, doesn't it?
100%.
And just giving yourself, you know, that time, even if it means you wake up 20 minutes earlier than your usual alarm, having just almost like that meeting with yourself before the day kind of takes over.
Exactly.
It gives you more calm, focused energy, I think.
100%.
I love that you do that together as well. It's quite a nice bonding moment first thing.
Yeah, it really is. And I think I've certainly found it a lot easier to be consistent doing it together.
Yeah, because on the days you're not feeling it, he's like, nope, come on.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, put on the meditation now.
That's so good.
Let's do our affirmations, which is great. And we do them now with the kids, the little affirmations, which is so nice. And they can say like, I'm loved, I'm special. And I'm like, it took me at least 30 years to be able to say that to myself. So the fact that that's innate in you, I feel hopefully that will be a real gift to them. Yeah. And then exercise, obviously your real USP and what you're so passionate about. But that's something that I think for way too long, I would say I just don't have time for it in my day.
Yeah.
But I am just such a better person when I consistently exercise.
Yeah. Are you more of a yoga person or?
I was a yoga person for a long time.
Okay.
And did my yoga teacher training and was like, before the kids, I would probably practice 6-7 times a week.
Wow.
Like quite obsessive. Loved it so much. But actually after my kids were born, I found that oh God, I just so much pain and like rebuilding your body just from a strength perspective and like an alignment perspective. My kids are only 14 months apart as well. So I was like,
it's a lot.
It's a lot. I was pregnant or breastfeeding for a solid 2.5 years or so continuously. But, and I started doing reformer Pilates.
Amazing.
And that has been amazing. So, and also it's just headspace as well in the day. So I try and do that maybe 3 times a week. And then other days it's just 10 minutes at home. But as I said, I think so often, even now I'm like, oh, won't make any difference. And 10 minutes later, you feel like a new person.
You feel the shift. And I also think it is such a form of meditation, that movement, because you're out of your head, you're in your body, and then you've had quiet time in your mind for that X amount of minutes.
100%.
So no, it's so important. And I only have you for about 5 more minutes. We went through all the topics, didn't we? Thinking, oh my God, we need a few hours. But can you kind of tell me what would be your top tip if you were to give someone that is, you know, like yourself, super busy, running a business, has a family, and wants to really tap into their thriving self and just to feel good, what would be your number one tip? Where to start?
It's a great question. I think it is not to, we all really overestimate what we can achieve in a day, in a week. And I think we really underestimate what we can achieve in 6 months, a year, a decade. And I think when it comes to health and wellness, the reality is the speed at which the industry has changed over the last 10, 15 years is so fast. And what was novel 10 years ago was adding more plants to your life and going on a walk and doing these quite simple evidence-based practices. And I think what's novel today is a lot more clickbaity and algorithm driving, and it can be quite extreme, quite expensive, quite time consuming. You know, most people don't have time for like a 2-hour routine with hot and cold therapy and all the rest of it before work. And that's great if you do, but I think it's easy to feel like, as I said, you can't do wellness to some extent because it's so consuming today. And for me, it would be stripping it back. And as I said, it's not about what you can do this week. It's not about what you can do this month or today. It's about the simple habits that you can really look yourself in the mirror and say, would I still be doing this in a year's time, in 2 years' time? Do I enjoy it enough? Does it fit with my lifestyle? Is it really plausible for me? As you were saying, like getting up 15, 20 minutes earlier every day to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes for yourself before the day and the chaos unfolds. That feels like a sustainable habit daily-ish, bar the night you go out for margaritas with your pals.
Yes.
But getting up 2 hours early and having that whole trend that you see online of a 5 till 9 before your 9 till 5, I don't think that's sustainable for most of us. And so to me, it's that thing is like, what are the small, simple building blocks that you can have daily-ish and you genuinely think you could keep up for the next decade? Think about those. And for the most part, they're going to be really simple. Maybe it's adding an extra portion of plants into every meal. And that could be like some sunflower seeds, some raspberries on your porridge. Like, doesn't need to be complicated, doesn't need to be expensive, but will make a massive difference to your health. Can be going for a 15-minute walk on your lunch break. Can be getting up 10 minutes earlier to do 5 or 10 minutes of breathing or meditation or journaling, or just sit silently with a coffee or a matcha and just really focus on those building blocks. If you nail all those building blocks, add on whatever you want, whatever's trending in wellness. But really focus on the simple evidence-based day-to-day pillars of health: stress management, sleep, eating more plants and less ultra-processed food, and moving your body in simple ways. There was a piece of research that I was just reading on my way here that just come out showing that they were looking at participants in a study who were dancing every day for their exercise, not structured dancing, not a dance class, because obviously most people really struggle to fit in exercise. It was just 20 minutes of just dancing to music they enjoyed, and they got the same benefits as all of the other kind of cardiovascular activities.
I love that.
Right? And we could all put on some music at home. Exactly.
Even with the kids.
Totally. While you're making breakfast.
Yeah.
And I think it's
and also it's such a mood booster as well.
Such a good vibe, right? Put on a song you like, dance, stretch for 10 minutes, whatever it is, but just focus on those simple long-term habits that you could keep up for a decade.
And also just know that all these small, tiny things have such an accumulative effect.
100%. And life ebbs and flows. Like what you can do this week, you might have more time. It won't be different next month. That's fine. You haven't failed. You haven't gone off a bandwagon. Because sustainably looking after yourself isn't about being on or off a bandwagon. It's about these things being part of your lifestyle.
I really love that. And I think kind of the same thing that we share is that I really believe that wellness is the balance of life. Like, true wellness is also sometimes going out for a late dinner with your friends
100%.
or, you know, sleeping in late because that's what your body needs. I think we can often be so extreme with wellness, and in that extremity, we're causing so much stress and anxiety and that feeling of I'm not good enough or I've let myself down. And that is doing the exact opposite for our well-being.
And it doesn't last. It's the reason 90+% of diets fail.
Exactly.
It's because it's that pursuit of perfectionism. And I think, again, because the health and wellness industry is so oversaturated, and it's so clickbait driven and so algorithm driven, and in that you kind of need extreme things to really go viral. There is this sense that there's this kind of never-ending self-optimization and perfectionism that's just inherently unrealistic. And as you said, just put so much pressure on yourself. So I think like switch all that noise off and just focus on those like simple daily habits that 101-year-olds in the blue zones around the world are doing, and none of them are fancy or expensive.
We need to do a separate podcast on blue zones. I love that. Thank you so much. And before you go, can we do a really quick fire round?
Of course.
Okay, so what's the book that changed your life?
Oh, the best book I've read in ages is I May Be Wrong. It's by a Swedish monk.
Oh my gosh.
If you haven't read it, you have got to read it. He had a very corporate job, quit his life and became a forest monk in Thailand. And it's not an earnest book. It's just full of amazing wisdom.
Wow.
And it's truly in terms of something that will prompt your thinking and shift your mindset. And it's very compassionate and kind. It is the best thing. I kind of urge you to read it. And it's also quite short and quite easy to read.
Okay.
I may be wrong.
I'm going to buy that for my honeymoon. So I'll report back. And what's the one piece of advice that you've received that you always find yourself kind of going back to and reminding or repeating to friends?
It's a great question. Do you know what? I think I remember when I first started working with my husband. And as I said, when I was ill, I really wanted someone else to solve the problem for me. And he really lives by a motto that actually a teacher told him at school, which is like, you just have to internalize the solution. And it's something that's really stuck with me since I met him 10 years ago, and I really like it and try and live by it, which is that it's so easy to outsource responsibility to other people. Maybe a reason you couldn't do something, say with your like health and wellness goals, maybe something at work. It's so easy to say it's someone else's fault or you didn't have time to do it because of X, Y, or Z, all events not in our control. And life isn't in our control. Like the only certainty in life is uncertainty, but you do have yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much in that of actually trying to be the solution in everything.
I love that. And taking responsibility.
100%. Even when you don't want to.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. Okay. And finally, what's next for Ella Mills?
Trying to find a bit more balance in my life. That's really it. Between all of the different facets of work, time with my kids. I've definitely had periods of my career where I just haven't spent enough time with them. So it's trying to have a more even keel, a better balance.
I feel like that's an ongoing struggle with so many, isn't it?
I'll probably be doing that for the next however many decades. But I'm getting better at it.
Okay, that's good. And where can everyone find you, and where can we kind of download the app? Tell us all the things.
Gosh, there's so many things.
I know. I feel like we need a checklist.
I won't give you too many. Well, all of the recipes are on the Delicious Yella Instagram or the Delicious Yella website. And there's, over 2,000 recipes in the Delicious Yella app membership. So that's all on the deliciousyella.com. For me personally, my Instagram's super easy. It's just Ella Mills. And that's all my day-to-day wellness tips, tricks. And then plants is actually, that's a very long one, but we have just acquired the All Plants brand name and all the assets. So the Plants brand is now on the @allplants handle if you want to see what we're doing with our new little
Oh my gosh,
business.
Just throw that one in there at the end. I love that.
Do you have all or nothing?
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for this. I've loved having you here and just chatting to you. And I feel like we need a follow-up. There's so much to go through. But thank you so much.
Such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.